more people are showing up. We're just kind of discussing right now some future talks that are coming up. We're starting next week with finances, just so everybody here who's in the room understands that we'll be doing a few weeks on cash flow management and a lot of tax stuff. And I just locked in January 7th for the Friedman brothers to come in and assist on Q&A for taxes for all of you guys. So they're pretty excited, and I'm excited to have them. So definitely be here for that. Next week, we are starting, like I said, full finance, and we're gonna have a lot of discussions about the economy and cash flow management. A lot of strategies from my mentor, Mike Malkowitz, who's the best-selling author of a book called Profit First.
I actually just like a week ago downloaded the audiobook of that, so I've been listening to it.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a dork, and I love the guy. He's just really has changed my life, and it's just proven strategies that just work. It works with the behavior that we have going on right now. So it's like really not out of our wheelhouse. We don't have to understand a lot of the things that you see on your tax form. A lot of that stuff is just kind of gibberish in the beginning. When your accountant starts talking about amortization and depreciations and all these stuff like that, yeah, that'll come over time. But in the beginning, a lot of these words are just like, they're like in, one ear out the other, and it's just, and that's okay. That's what accountants are for. The right one, that is. So we'll have more discussions about it. But I think I'm going to go ahead and, what are we time-wise? So we're 10:06 right now. I'm just going to go ahead and get started, guys. Real quick, just my intro here. I'm here to empower shop owners and artists build a positive and growth-oriented, company. And I just want everybody to make sure that, if you have any legal questions or finance questions that require more of a professional, seek them out. This is some of the things that come along here are just advice and just for open discussion, really get us, thinking in the right way. Definitely on be respectful, of course, within the group. Everybody has been so far the last few. I don't want to I'm not going to drop these intros. I'll probably just shorten them down to a couple sentences at some point. But yeah, just, wait your time. If you have any questions or whatever, go ahead and use your raise hand on here. Gabe's here to help assist my Zoom inadequacies. So put things in the chat and we'll eventually get to it, or raise your hand and let's have more of a discussion. That being said, the topic today is really kind of an offshoot. I'd like to kind of from last week. Last week's discussion was more it was about emotional intelligence, and really understanding, that our self-awareness and our self-regulation and our empathy and our social skills, how they play a role with the clients that we work with, and with our coworkers. And I like to really have a discussion about the shop dynamics that come from this as well today. And I've really have seen such a vast array of shop dynamics in all the shops I've ever worked in, the shops I've attended to, I've been in, that I serve as a supplier in the Northwest, and even shops that I owned. And you get a lot of companies out there. There's a lot of talk in the last 10, 15 years about company culture. And a lot of these, big corporations, require a culture in their family to kind of keep the peace and the vibe going strong. And we don't always have that discussion about how we keep the peace and the vibe going in a tattoo shop. When I started in this industry, I had that mentor that taught me my way or the highway. And I was considered more of a cash cow to their experience, but I was a new tattooer and I just wanted to be, great at what I do. I'm learning because there was no, internet, teaching tools out there like there is today. So I was bound to that old school apprenticeship. And when I really started dissecting, my happiness level with him, after 6 years, I was like, kind of miserable. I was miserable to be living in his experience because he never really created a really solid, you know, foundation or group setting. You know, it's just about everything we worked in was all about him. And he never really like pushed us in a way that helped our growth. You know, there was never any really check-in that was happening with him, you know, on a yearly basis. He never really checked in with us to see, you know, how the shop can improve. You know, and these are things that you know, eventually kind of ran me off. And I've seen this same experience happen over and over again, especially during COVID. COVID was a big wake up call for a lot of artists out there who were working in shops that didn't have a really great culture, you know, with kind of an emotionally inept, you know, business owners, and they just had enough, you know, and it wasn't just a matter of they can make more money by having their own locations. You know, they knew that they could actually be happier on their own. But in doing that, when we go out on our own and we venture out, and we have our own space, or, you know, for by ourselves or whatever, it's a lonely space. It's extremely lonely, and it can become very depressing, you know, at times. You know, it can last for a while, but eventually we need a community, you know, and that's what we are trying to build, you know, that culture within our community right now, just here as a group right now. Some of the people here in the group right now do work alone, but, you know, here you are chiming in to this group. This is your community. These are people that you work with. You know, we're all here to grow together. And that's crucial here online. We have this opportunity, and also we have the opportunity in our shops. So if you're a shop owner, it's something that, you know, could really, it's something to really look at. You know, this is part of your emotional intelligence, is becoming self-aware of the culture that you defined, you know, becoming self-aware of the culture you're trying to achieve at some point. You know, we're a really interesting industry, because you can look at other industries. When I started looking into culture aspects of business, most of it just brings me to all my online research and all the books I've read on this. It brings me to huge corporations, ones that involve employees. But here we are, an industry full of individuals that are running their own company, even within other people's companies. And the cultural awareness isn't always there and always discussed. So a lot of times, a lot of artists will work for somebody, but never feel comfortable in like giving the owner feedback, you know, or having like stronger discussions about like maybe how improvements can happen, or even discussing about what they want, you know, what their needs are. And I've been in those shoes, and I've also been that shop owner that worked with people too, where I felt as a shop owner, I was very separate to my crew that had their own culture going on. They would hang out after work. And I found myself many years doing my own thing with my own friends after work, not hanging out with my crew, you know? And it was like, wow, what's happening? You know, when you were not all aligned in the same shop, there's a lot of animosity that starts to create. You know, there's a lot of things that aren't being said that need to be said. So I just wanted to kind of have a discussion about those concepts today, how we can build a stronger community within our shops, and how maybe we can share some areas of what we didn't like in shops that we previously worked with. You know, as I was discussing about my mentor, I eventually got bitter and cold and had to move on, because I wasn't feeling like a warmth and acceptance. I didn't feel any growth there. So, does anybody want to share maybe some recent experiences that they've had in shops that they either were in or, you know, had to leave because the culture was just kind of toxic to them? I'm going to leave it in anybody's court here to start the talk. I'd love to hear some experiences.
I mean, I can go.
Yeah.
So I actually just sold my half of my previous tattoo shop because my business partner and I didn't go through we were very gung-ho in the beginning and just really excited to get the space. We didn't put together really the best business plan. We knew everything that needed to go, but the contract parts of it, we had shop paperwork, we had all of that, but the contract between us was not great. And then we started realizing that we just had two very, very different business styles. He was very much wanting to be frugal, not invest into the company. Things are okay, keep it how it is, where I wanted to branch out. They were also pretty adamant about, like, a lot of this was during COVID. So like there was a lot of still like contentions about masks and things. And so there was like a lot of tension in the shop about masks because we were in a very conservative area and we were a very liberal shop. So there was very much an interesting dynamic that was going on in that shop. But to try to like flip around that culture, it was just, I realized at a certain point that that we were just all two different sides. Like there wasn't able to make a mesh. And it was actually at one of Derek's talks where he was like, if you look around and the people you're assigning the job aren't doing the job correctly, if you're looking at them and you keep asking them to do it over and over and over again, and they keep not doing what you're asking, it's not their fault. It's actually your fault, because you're the one who's, putting the expectation on a person who's not capable of giving you the deliverable. And so that is kind of why I decided to branch off on my own. But yeah, I think that if you can align yourself correctly in the beginning, before you set off on that thing, and really setting those intentions in the very beginning of a relationship with another tattooer shop, it just sets the tone for the rest of the entire time.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think a lot of us, we find ourselves in locations that we're not aligned with the same values and the same intentions, with the shop owner. And we just are there for, we're there for the clients, of course, and we're there for the money for a while, but that can be very short-lived, and it's, if I was to be working in a shop right now, working under somebody else, I wouldn't want to be there for the long haul. I want to be there, and I want to feel like, I got to spend this much time with you guys. You're my family, sometimes more than my own family. I see you more than I see my own family sometimes, in the waking day. So like this, the shop intention, the values, the contracts, all this stuff matters. Caroline, love to hear from you.
Oops, okay, there we go. My story is right from like when I was working in my first shop. So in 98 to 2000, we were in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and all of us are putting zeros in our books because it's the ghetto. You're not doing so great. But we had this mentality in the shop where we didn't want anybody to go home hungry. So we all shared a piece of the pie. We were all like encouraging each other to, basically one up each other. We always had like this competitive competition and stuff like that, where we were all trying to better each other and, and spread the wealth, make sure that everybody left there with something in their pocket. And same company, I leave and go to the other location, and the mentality there was the shit rolls down the hill, so that the boss gets, first dibs on everything. Then it's the manager that then is second, on the totem pole, and then so forth down the fucking totem pole. Even though I was with the same company and at a different location, there was an artist that started with the company after I did by a year. So then I get up to that location. Well, now I'm the low man on the pole. And I was like, okay, well, I watched that manager starve out other people, especially one of the other artists that I really liked. His girlfriend was also apprentice, but they starved her out. I was like, yeah, fuck that. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that game. And, and so I tried to bring what we were doing in Elizabeth up to Greenbrook. And it didn't work so well. Like I ended up being the busiest artist there, and everybody got resentful. and it was like, well, because I'm putting together a good portfolio. I'm, doing good tattoos. People are referring them to me. Like you know, I'm doing the things. I'm going to the conventions. I'm sitting through seminars. And it was like, why can't I have this, what I had in Elizabeth? Like, why can't these people, why aren't they falling in line with me? Like, why are they, wanting to be here when I want to be up here? Like, why can't we all be up here? Like, I want everybody to be here, because if we're here, then we can keep elevating each other. And well, eventually I ended up leaving there and going from one shop environment to another, to another, to another, and still not finding that kind of mentality anywhere. Like one toxic situation after another. And now I'm in my own shop and I own my own shop. And it's like, okay. And it's finally now, little by little, like finding the people that are on that level. And it's nice that I want to continue rolling that ball, and I want to continue making that be a thing, because it's nice. It's nice not to stress out. It's nice to just like go to work and be excited to be there and be with the people that are there with you. So I just want to make sure that continues happening.
And I think you will. I think you've experienced somebody who doesn't lead by example in the right way, and for any artist owner who's just like, oh, I'm going to take everything that walks in the door and you get what's left, animosity is going to build real quick on that one. You keep your artist starving, you got a problem. So it's great that you got to work with a shop too that was like, hey, nobody's left alone in this one. We're all coming up together, and that's part of the collaboration. If you're not fostering that kind of environment, then it's like cancer in your company. It will eventually take over. I'm kind of curious if anybody has any strong examples of like good things that we could be doing to actually bring in better culture into our shops, or even if you are a shop owner, how you can inspire the shop owner into being more on the collaboration kick, providing maybe more growth opportunities and stuff like that, so you don't have somebody up here and everybody else is down here. That doesn't always fit very well either.
That's a lot about recruiting though, right? Like, or at least I found. So like, the artists that get hired on that aren't going for it haven't been filtered or like recruited for that. And like how, it's very difficult to instill that in somebody, right? So it's, certainly it's our responsibility as shop owners who've hired somebody to like either train them up or train them out, right? It's like now what, and it's, and I did this, right? It's a shift from like expecting people to show up and do their tattoos, which actually is not even that trivial either, but you can do it. That's one shift. But then there's another shift of like, I want to be a world-class tattooer amongst other world-class tattooers. And, sometimes you just have to, shed anybody in the, either make sure that there's enough space for everybody, but there's a psychological imbalance. Like, why do they get to slack off and I'm working like a maniac to be the best I could be? And they literally just do the minimum, right? That there's an imbalance there. So I found, if you're going to set a standard, it's your responsibility to train people up to it and try to get them to it. But then 3 months later, 6 months later, if it's not the right fit anymore, it's not the right fit. And then you're recruiting on, are you shooting to be the best you could possibly be and know how much work it takes? This might be the shop for you. Are you looking to travel the world and come back to a secure home of people that aren't jealous? This might be the spot. But I'm also not a fantastic leader type, right? So I'm sure there's other ways to go about it other than,
I think you are a fantastic leader type. So yeah, I mean, this is so true when it comes to like, setting the new a standard for your shop. It's in recruiting systems and everything in play. What are those standards? what are you discussing with the people that you're hiring on? Are you just hiring on to fit the chair, to fill the space, to take in all the extra walk-in time? Or is like something like strong work ethics part of your values and what you're discussing before you hire them on? Because you get that a lot. Some people, some artists, some shops, they love to come in and they just do enough, and because they're independent contractors, they won't stay till shop close, and they roll out to go video game. They're just making just enough. But if you're not that kind of shop and you want to be serving every single client that's coming in the door from open to close, you can't demand that of an independent contractor, but you can influence that with an independent contractor by setting the standard in your own life. If you're a shop owner who is complaining about people not doing their job and not working enough, but you're also rolling out whenever you want, is that a good example? Is that really a strong culture? I know with my supply company, when I started to make a transformation in my own employment style, I really started to check in with my crew as to what they were after. I started asking the question, like, what do you see in your future? I wanted to hear about their desires, like what they really wanted out of it. Was it just as a job, or is this going to help them improve their lives, drastically? What are they looking for? And a lot of employees too, they're just looking for the certainty of a paycheck. Others, they were like, I want to make some decisions. I want to be a part of a company that's going somewhere. And those people are the ones that stay with me. They've been with me the longest. They've been there since the beginning. It's not always about the money. It's about the collaboration. So, any other ideas on, just strong, cultural stuff that we could do, that we could be focused on as shop owners? Or even better, if you're in a shop, maybe with a shop owner who isn't up to par, I'm really curious about what we could do to inspire that person.
I think it goes both ways, right? Because I've been doing this for quite some time. I think this is the first time that me doing it myself is the first time the owner's been in the shop. So I worked for a bunch of places where nobody even showed up ever. The tightest connection was in Hollywood, which was my very first shop. But I definitely had to go in and be like, hey guys, if we keep stepping on each other like this, it's going to get weird. We got to help each other. And that was fine. But as you move to other places and other people have other specialties, then you start to rely on everybody having the same motivation that you have. And that's hard to picture because A, I show up all the time. B, I'm constantly trying to push inside and outside of tattooing. You still can't really make people change in a way that they don't want to or they're not ready to, right? And I really try to lean on the lead by example, and then expecting people to do things that they're probably not ready to do or able to do. Because for me, my thing is this: I don't want to just regurgitate information. Here's the place that I learned it from. You can go learn the thing that you're telling me you want to know, and we can talk about it. But then if they won't take those steps, then the more times we go back to the same issue, the more aggravated I get. And, I end up holding on because I want everybody to come up, and then I just end up being a bigger dickhead about it. I'm like, just do the fucking steps, dude. Draw the lines in the book. You'll train your hand. It'll be okay. But if you won't do this, your morning exercises or whatever, then the rest of your day is going to go downhill too. And it's across the board like that. And so I think hunting for the right people and the right relationships is more important than the next person or the next relationship.
So if you were to kind of rate your communication with your crew when you're hiring them on, or when you're having these problems where you kind of find yourself talking the same thing over and over,
great with peers, not great with apprentice types that don't really when it's too much information for them to grasp all at once, or they haven't been through it. I don't think that I'm communicating it properly, but when I meet people that are like, over 10 years in, or we've all been up and down and around and traveled some and everything else, no friction. It's totally chill. It's just when I'm like expecting people to do something. And I think like over the last couple of years, I've come to understand that like everybody wants to rent because they don't want to give up any more of their money than they have to. Right. And so as a shop, kind of the deal for me is like, I can just rent space. I have a good name. We've been open for 10 years. Everything's fine. But as a shop in 2025, marketing is a huge part of it. Right. And so like, I have to dive into the marketing. So if I'm diving into the marketing aspects and asking everybody else, hey, take all this other material that I'm giving you and level up your art skills. And everybody's refusing to do that because we all want to double down on the marketing because we're more concerned about getting people in the door than getting them a quality, whatever, artist that understands what they're doing. It becomes frustrating because then I'm taking care of walk-ins where a guy is like, hey, I got this handprint. It's in orange. I want it black. Meanwhile, somebody across the room is murdering a face that they should have not signed up for. And that gets aggravating as well because I'm still responsible for the clients when they're walking out the door that like I co-signed all this stuff.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's I think we've all been in the shoes there for if you've been a shop owner. I've been the same way. I remember many times where I felt the same way, Mickey. When I would have to say things 2 or 3 times over, I got really frustrated to the point, and then I didn't realize that my communication was off. And so when I was able to kind of translate that into a feeling with starting with I first, it really fucking transformed my communication with people rather than saying, you know what, I don't like that your station's such a mess. I'm like, hey, I feel that, I get really frantic when your station looks the way it is. And I do that in a kind of like feeding to that emotion and letting them know how I feel first. It tend to shift, the translation around. And it seemed that people would get on board more often. I didn't have to repeat myself as much when I was leading with that. And I also realized that, everybody hears things differently as well. So my communication comes down to the very specifics. I have to know what their communication style is first. And if I am assuming that they understand, typically shit's going to go fucking south and they're always going to disappoint me. I have to get really specific and ask that question of them. Hey, what did you hear? What are you going to do here? And I want them to spell it back to me as to what they heard. That way they know, and I've gotten to the point where I had to write this out. We have policies in our supply company now too. We have write-ups and verbal warnings and all that shit, but I have employees. I don't have contractors. But I think this clear communication can still happen even with independent contractors. We're not that rare, I guess we're rare in the scheme of industries out there having so many independent contractors underneath our roofs. But I'm kind of, communication is key, and getting better at that is key. And of course, that emotional intelligence tied to that, just improves our social skills and gets us better at it. So, hey, thanks, Mickey. Appreciate you being here. Anybody else have any experiences or maybe some present problems that they're maybe having in the shop that they want some help with or some feedback or direction? Everyone's got a good thing going on, it sounds like.
I could bring something up, I guess.
Cool. Yeah.
So I'm navigating for the first time being in like an actual like street shop where there is actual business coming in off the street with nobody knowing who the artists are and any of that stuff. So this is like a new experience for me to be navigating. With another one of the artists who I'm working with, like, I feel like he often just like if he was up in rotation, he like assumes that like if someone was booking for, they wanted to inquire about a future date, that like he kind of gets to pounce on that entirely when it was for like a group of people. And like I'm just finding difficulties in navigating like advocating for like, hey, we should probably give them the option of who they want to schedule with if they're not just walking in for the day. Like, oops, sorry about that. And it's like, I don't really know what's going on. Sorry, I got a phone call and I thought I silenced it, but apparently I answered it.
We can't hear it.
Okay, good. And it's like I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate this, because when the shop owner is not around and it's just him and I, it gets a little awkward for me. Like, for instance, yesterday 2 people walked in, they're like, yeah, we want to book for like 2 Saturdays from now, which that's like way in advance at this point. Like, yeah, and one of the people who they were inquiring for wasn't even there with them. And he's like, yeah, I can get you in here. Let me take a deposit. Blah, blah. I'm like, wait a second. Like, there should be more of like a consultation process on this. Like, what are they looking for? We should show them both of our portfolios. We should be giving them the option. Is that like, am I right about that? Like, is that something that we should be discussing with one another? Like, how do we approach this situation? If that makes sense. If I didn't ramble too much.
Not at all. Anybody have any thoughts on this one?
Well,
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to jump in here because this is how I got everybody angry at me when I moved to Greenbrook. So when people would walk in and they would say, hey, I was referred to my boss. Okay, good. I'll grab their portfolio, show them the portfolio, grab his appointment book. And my mentor had the degenerative disc disease. So if the people that came in, if they wanted it on their chest or lower back, immediately my boss could do that. So then it would be like, okay, well then I would give them everybody's portfolios. I'd be like, well, here's everybody's book. You let me know who you want to work with. And so because I had crafted a really well done and put together portfolio, 95% of the time people would pick me. So, but I just wouldn't hand them the portfolios immediately. If somebody came in and said, I want to get tattooed by this specific artist, I would go and grab their appointment book and I'd make their appointment. But if somebody had just come in and said, I was referred to the shop, then I would hand them the portfolios and I say, you tell me who you want to work with and we'll go from there.
In my experience, am I talking?
You are. Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry. In my experience at a couple of studios I worked at in the past, right now I'm in a private studio, or an appointment only studio. But in walk-in shops in the past, we've done it by order of whoever got to work first. So the first walk-in of the day went to the first person who was there. The second one went to the second person. And if somebody was busy, it'd skip and go to the next person in the rotation. But it wasn't uncommon for every artist in the shop to have the integrity to, like, if it was their turn in the rotation, to just be like, actually, this person would be way better for this project for you. Because everybody kind of was honest enough to know that they had their own areas that they were better in, and didn't want anybody leaving the shop with a bad tattoo just because somebody was too desperate to make a buck. And didn't have the integrity to be all like, actually, this person's way better at portraits, so you want to go to them, and things like that. But also that was in the period of time, the post-COVID boom, when everybody was using their stimulus checks to finally go outside for the first time in months and get their tattoo fix. So that was when things were a little bit more busy, so passing up a tattoo to the next artist wasn't as big of a deal as it is right now during a slow season and a recession.
Was that an unspoken policy of doing rotations like that, or was that something that was discussed?
It was kind of discussed upon hiring. It was just like, oh, by the way, when walk-ins come in, it goes by order of who's in work first.
Yeah, that's how it works for us too. I guess I should rephrase, like, when someone comes in and they're trying to book a future appointment, like, just because on the rotation for the day doesn't mean that that person gets to book that appointment. And I don't really know how to express, like, hey, we should give them the option of looking at portfolios and seeing who they would prefer to book with when they referred to the shop, not necessarily a particular artist.
Okay, my bad. I thought you were just talking about just anybody that walks in.
Oh no, yeah, I kind of rambled, so it's probably my bad.
I'd like to add to that. I had my hand up, but the last shop that I worked in, a lot of people left the shop. Like you just said, you don't want anybody leaving with a bad tattoo, but people would just leave the shop because a confused buyer will never buy. So I had a whole little system devised, and the bosses just didn't think it was important enough. So can I share my system with you guys? It might help you out. Please. So they had like 13 artists in that shop, and some that rotated between a different locations. So they had a lot of different styles and a lot of different levels of experience, and everybody thinks, whatever opinions, and I worked in a shop once that did the rotation thing, and I hated it. But anyways, so what I told them to do was, and they hadn't done this yet, so if you've already done this, then kudos. I said, put dots on your Instagram for every artist with their name and like maybe the top 10 or so of like their tattoos. So when people go to your Instagram, then at least they can be like, oh, Devin does this style and Liz does that style. And then they can see what they are looking for. Because when they walk in a shop, they just see a shop. They don't see what they're looking for. And they know in their head, and we all know that our clients don't know how to communicate. So we got to speak a million different versions of English for every client that comes in. So I said, make a little book, one portfolio, like a little one like this. You can do them on Vistaprint. They have sales all the time. They'll have a bunch of post-Christmas sales. So you guys can start if you want to do this for your studio. They cost like $17 each. You could have 3 or 4 of them like laying around the shop in different places, and have on the first page, have like the first spread, have like, depending on how many artists you have, a picture of the artist, their name, and maybe like a 3-sentence thing. I love doing American traditional. I've been tattooing since 98. I love my job because, and just like a little intro. And then as you go through the book, then those people have a 3-page spread. So the first page will be a bio of them, like a good picture of them and an actual bio. I went to art school. I did this, blah, blah, blah. I won these awards. And then a photo of them tattooing, and then some photos, like a collage of their work. And I feel like then we are equipping our clients with we're empowering them to have an experience where they feel like they're going to find what they're looking for and be more taken care of. And a book takes a couple hours to put together and costs $20. And those clients won't be leaving and going to the shop across the street. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I don't know if it helps you.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely helpful. Like, I know that I have a portfolio book with a bunch of like painted flash that I keep in the shop. I have a line book for all my different flash. I'm in process of putting together like a photo book of my tattoos. It's been on my to-do list that, again, is like a million things long because we're tattooers. But I guess like one of the other things that I'm kind of struggling with is with like my shop owner. He's a good guy and he seems to really like have things figured out, and like he wants to see everybody succeed and he wants to see everybody getting fed for the day. But he is so inactive on social media, like to a point where it's like, why even bother having a page for the shop? Like, he doesn't list us as artists. He doesn't post any work. I think the last time he posted something was one of his tattoos like 3 months ago. And it's like, I feel awkward trying to be like, hey, maybe we should be on here, or like pushing him to do something that he's not really interested in doing when it's not my business. It's just kind of, yeah, it's one of those things.
You guys should each take a day. Be like, look, this needs to be done. I'm going to do it on Tuesdays. All right. You can do it on Thursdays. You can do it on Saturdays. I'm going to shut up now.
I think that's great. I think sharing responsibilities is key, especially to that team dynamic that you're looking for. Nicole, I'm just wondering if you feel supported enough to at least like to call a team meeting to have discussions about the social media and about the rotations and everything else.
Yeah, I would feel comfortable bringing it up to him, but I'm not confident that it's going to go anywhere.
I mean, it's the owner's shop, right? Like,
Yeah.
Caroline, Henry's.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. Nicole, are you an independent contractor?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I worked at my mentor shop, we were all independent contractors. We were he had a website. We were on the website, but we were not allowed to carry our own business cards. So what I did was I made my own website, and then I made my business card that literally just had the web address on it, and that was it. And then I started getting myself into conventions that way, because I would call and say, hey, I want to get into your show. And then they'd ask me, well, do you have an online portfolio? Yes, I do. And I'd give them my web address. So like if you're an independent contractor, you can make your own website, and then you could just keep updating your own website.
Oh, yeah.
I still would talk, I would still talk to the shop owner about getting a website because it's invaluable. Like I just went through and I was just like looking at my shit. And my boyfriend, like he gets so tunnel vision where I'm trying to tell him, I was like, yo, me and the business are not one and the same. So and so then he just started heavily like working on like the shop website, but then forgot about mine. And I'm like, yo, like we're both two separate things. Like, can we focus back on my website too? Thank you.
Yeah, I've had my own website, my own cards, everything. I've been doing my own marketing since I started my career. So that's definitely like, I'm no like stranger to that sort of thing. Which does benefit me. Like I had somebody actually walked in being like, oh yeah, we saw you online and we were actually thinking of booking with you. But then, for some reason they didn't, they just walked into the shop, which happened to be the one I work in, which is, that's another story, but yeah, I don't know. It's just like old school guys sometimes, trying to get them to do things that they don't want to do.
It's hard. Like, it's their shop, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, I think it's blessed to have you, like you have an opportunity right now to help evolve him as well and to influence him. And that's the thing too, if you're an independent contractor, you're a business yourself, and you can also inspire the artist that owns the shop as well. And that's a key, but of course you have to navigate that differently depending on the person, especially when you haven't been there very long, you don't know them well enough, you're building that relationship, but eventually you get to the point where you're like, you can be more candid with them. You've got to understand that radical candor is part of this as well. And we need to inspire and influence because we want to be there for the long haul. We want to be there for a long time. And so, what are you going to do? If you sit there and you stay quiet, how is that going to affect you over time?
Yeah.
So what's more important to you?
Yeah.
And we have groups like this too. We can always, if anybody ever has an issue going forward with things, we could play the role-playing game. I love the role-playing game. We have it all the time. We deal with you in my supply company, and my general manager will have to come to me sometimes and going, this is our situation. What do you think about this? And we role play before we make it, before any kind of directive happens, so it's a really positive tool, to use. So we could use this as a community, as a culture that we're building in this group right now. Use us if you need us.
Cool.
Gabe, you were a shop owner for a really long time. I'm curious about your culture. Where did you, because I've seen your back end.
So
impressive.
It was like a 12 year stretch, and we went from like one artist who quit pretty quickly. Actually, Joshua Carlin was our first guest artist, and when he intimidated the hell out of our residents, so within 3 months it was like just guest artists. And I mean, I guess to make a long story like 3 minutes, as far as like cultures and leadership are concerned, right? Like I'm a non-tattooer who has like I do the computery businessy stuff, and the computer stuff in particular. And so people were very attracted to the effect, without understanding that like hard work and, I don't like to promote myself, any more than a artist who doesn't want to promote themselves wants to promote themselves. But like, if I wanted to pay my rent, I was going to have to start selling shit. Anyways, main point is I was shying away from the leadership parts of it as the shop was growing. And maybe like 6 years in, when we had like 6 artists, 7 artists, is when like I defined mission and values. So it wasn't just a shop to like come and get busy at. It was a shop to come work really hard, get busy at. You're going to be around other pretty intimidating people. I suppose people get intimidated by, people who've earned a lot of respect, right? So it was easy to watch people fall apart, right? Then what was interesting as far as cultures were concerned is, in an effort to purchase a piece of real estate, we had 2 shops in the same town for a while. And because I was leaving a leadership void, we had a really good manager, or good at a lot of things manager, not good at, and fatal at some things. And then a new guy who's a tattooer, who was learning to tattoo, who was more of like from a trade. So he wasn't done until everything was cleaned, and he wasn't clean your shit up. So for 2 years, we had like one crew of a shop that was held to a standard, and no one else was cleaning up after you. Clean up after yourself, asshole. And another shop that people could be late, it was okay. There'd always be cleaning up afterwards, right? And so 3 years of that, we moved all into this one big piece of real estate, a 2,000 square foot ballroom, 2,500 square foot ballroom. And I was excited because I finally got everybody together, and there was like 2 culture clashes. Actually, I think, Mickey, you were there. You could probably even speak to some of it. And, again, parts of it was, I never necessarily recovered from, right? Letting 2 other people kind of lead the 2 different crews. Now, that said, about a year or 2 before the shop ended up closing up, we had 15 artists in East Hampton who would show up when they were expected to, and they would let us know if they were going to leave an hour early, right? As long as there was somebody that was there to have consultations with people, right? Like there was they would give us 2.5 months notice before they would travel, so we could book guest artists in their space, and not have 4 empty booths by accident at some point, right? Everyone was there, and what would happen is we'd lose people who didn't want to be held to a standard, and we were attracting people who wanted to like show up to work on time, right? And like they wanted to leave, and they only want to have happy surprises, and not be like Hannah, a couple of artists said it. Hannah said it really awesome in one of the interviews. It's like the more disciplined you are, the more wild and crazy you could be, if that makes sense. And if you're dealing with 15 artists in a space, or 20 artists, with guests and whatnot, it's definitely tricky to keep it all together and keep everybody on the same page, and everyone has agendas. And again, I wouldn't everyone who has shops here, pat yourself on the back. It's crazy, and if you and that's part of the trying to communicate with a shop owner who's got like an agenda on their mind, so I guess part of what we would do though is we would have monthly meetings, with the whole shop, with clear agendas. To your point, when we were done with if I had to reprimand somebody, if I had to have, so we had a monthly meeting with everybody so we could all talk together. I think once a month we had a one-on-one meeting with every artist. So somebody had a place to address us in public, and they had a place to address us in private. And then from there, if we had to have something that was an emergency and couldn't wait, and we had to have a talk on a one-on-one, it would be like, Derek, you can't fucking leave a client in a chair, go talk about to your insurance agent and fucking do personal business on your client's time, And then when we were done, I would send an email that was like, so Derek, when we talked, I said it was unacceptable to be on the fucking phone doing personal business with your client sitting in their chair, and not for nothing, but her mother was there. Like, it's, you could, well, anyways, main point is we would follow up, and that got us pretty far. Like I said, at the end of it, we had, 15 people in one location. We had 5 or 6 in Italy, or in Oregon. and about 100 guests a year, going through, and all these mechanisms like the feedback forms, for both the artists and for the clients, were vital in us, optimizing things for the artists and for the clients.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really challenging too, especially when you have that many artists on, because you still have to respect their independence.
Yeah,
they are.
You could give them a lot of flexibility. Some people started at 9, they work 9 to 5. Some people would show up and do 12 to 8.
I got to do things that don't impose, on employee scenarios too with independent contractors. You can't blur those kind of legal distinctions.
Well, they were all employees. So we got sued. All of the people at Off the Map were employees. We ran them as independent contractors. Our accountant at one point was like, "You can't do that," and I was like, "What am I supposed to do? Hire on fucking 8 tattooers? Like they're all fucking pirates and they don't want to pay taxes." So at the end of it, I got sued, and we paid 3 years of taxes and not 12 years. But I did have to hire everybody on as employees, and I lost people at that point. Which.
But that kind of segues in the future talks that we are going to have about this, because independent contractor versus employee is crucial, going forward. So beginning of next year, part of my financial talks, we're going to branch into that as well. So expect those calls.
Yeah, and that's based on state laws too. So what, in Massachusetts, it's illegal to be a tattooer and an independent contractor, or not illegal, but it's not, you're going to get sued eventually. There are other places, I believe, like in Oregon and other places where it's absolutely like you can't be an employee; you have to be an independent contractor, and then you just require, fulfill all the requirements. But yeah, it's definitely a
different state, but there are some federal, regulations when it comes to that too, especially with the IRS.
Yep.
So let's, we'll talk more about that. Well, I mean, I definitely appreciate this, this talk. I love, some of these insights. I wish I would have had back when I owned a tattoo shop, to be honest with you. And I could have kept some people around, and, really treated them the way that they wanted to be treated. Discussion just wasn't there, so yeah, it's challenging. Any kind of dynamics that we have in our shop and stuff like that, it's a dance. If you're new and you're trying to learn what everybody's about, there's a dance. If you've been there for a long time, you're the shop owner and you're trying to bring in more people, every single person that you bring on, are they going to be the right fit? And it's just about having that clarity in that discussion, with them. It's really mapping that out. That is the roadmap to your success, is, just mapping out what your management style is going to be with somebody that you're bringing on, and, any kind of challenges, be open to that. There has to be a consistent feedback loop, that's occurring in your shop. And that even goes for you. Ask for the feedback. If you're a shop owner, ask for it, because typically they don't want to tell you, but once you give them the freedom to do it, they will. And that's where the growth happens. It did take me a couple of years for when I first started doing that, for that to really kind of hone in. I realized my fucking ego's in play right now. I don't want to be hearing that shit. Well, I don't want to be hearing that shit because it's probably true, so just be open to it, and, find that there's a lot of opportunities out there for you, like you, Nicole. There's opportunities there for you.
It's in my mind. I have to get it out real quick. If you're a shop owner, one of the best questions to ask during your one-on-ones, or what would it take for you to be here in 10 years?
Good one. Great one.
And then they're like, holy shit, you're actually thinking about, and if you're a tattooer and you're working at a shop, you can't force your owner to think about that, right? But like that comes around, because half the time the shop owners are like, well, I'd offer them some, points, or I'd offer to help them open up a shop. And I'm like, do you tell them? And, but yeah, anyways, main point is, when we ask tattooers that questions, they would give us the answers, and we were, on our way to making that shit happen. That was a wicked successful strategy.
For shop owner, you can ask one more question. If you were to change one thing about this shop, what would it be?
Yeah.
People will tell you. So, well, I appreciate you all being here. This is great. Next week, we're going into the money. It's end of the year. Tax season's coming. It's going to be a few weeks of money talks, a lot about cash flow management. I do have the tattoo tax guys coming January 7th. Q&A open for accountants that are really exclusive and only work with tattoo artists. So that's a rarity, and it's going to be a special treat for all of us. But as for, the talk today, I learned a lot. I really appreciate all of you being here, and yeah, let's keep this going. Anybody have any final thoughts or anything they had pressing that they wanted to get out?
Today, if you're an APT member, I'm going to be doing my seminar on written tax records.
If you're not an APT member, go sign up.
Yes.
I just realized the other day that my corporate sponsorship had laxed. They didn't charge my card in September, and I was like, wait, I'm an APT member. And they're like, oh no, we didn't have it on that filing system. So I had to go and renew on that one, but be a part of it. APT's got a wonderful thing going on, and it is about our future. So support it. And Caroline is working her ass off on the back end.
Yeah, and Caroline's the webinar that she has given tonight is worth the price it costs to join, and we'll be doing more webinars. I'm doing one next month on healing tattoos and breast cancer tattoos, scar tattoos.
Yeah, awesome. Yay. All right, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see each other next Tuesday.
Smile and make a funny face so that we can have a good time.